Howdy folks, Nathan here from TFL Studios, and what you're looking at, believe it or not, is a 2002 Porsche Boxster with some minor changes, and I wanted to bring the owner, Dennis, over here to talk about this vehicle, which is obviously built for track. And you may have noticed a couple changes, so I was hoping that you could tell us all about this vehicle, and in this video we're going to explain not only what this vehicle is, but why he did it. All right, Dennis. Let's start from the beginning. Did you buy this Porsche with the idea of stripping it down and making it this?
I did. So I actually found this on Facebook Marketplace. It had been crashed, and the prior owner, he crashed it on Interstate 25 down in Colorado Springs, had it on there for probably about 6 weeks and nobody bit. And during that time I had come aware of the kind of the death carts that I've seen online, and most of those are based on like Corvettes and Miatas, and it just occurred to me if I could build a mid-engine kind of kart thing, it would really combine, you know, my love of go-karting, and I could actually weld on some mountain bike mounts and have like a perfect thing to actually take out to the mountains, go drive the twisty canyon roads, go riding, and then come back. It has a front trunk in it still, so you have room for your gear, and it all came to fruition. This is
a little bit more than a, you know, in the garage project that takes 3 weekends to put together. This looks like it was a lot of work. So can you take us through, coming from the vehicle that has, you know, was in the accident, what were the problems with the vehicle, and then what you did to it to get it to this point?
So when I bought it, it had been hit on the right side. So the right door, the right front fender were both totaled. There was some damage to the rear fender as well. The hood was damaged. The front bumper was completely gone. Knowing that, you know, the price of Porsche parts, you know, buying a new door, new fender, new hood, new bumper, and doing body work and paint, it just kind of, you know, really mechanically totaled the car, even though it still had a clean title. And that, you know, comes into play later. So, you know, I got the car for a good price, and I was able to, you know, tear it down and start cutting away metal, and made it all in my garage.
So this fabrication you did yourself? I did, yeah. Wow. Okay, so let's get into some of the technical details. Did you change the engine, or is it still the same 4-cylinder, you know, naturally aspirated powertrain that it was before?
Correct. It's the original stock flat six.
I said 4-cylinder, didn't I?
That's all right.
No, that's all right. I don't know.
Newer Boxsters do have the 4-cylinders.
Yeah, and that's where my head is right now. Keep going, please.
But yeah, it has the 2.7 liter, so it's not the S model. It's the base model. So you can't be too picky when you're getting the car for that price.
Right.
And when you strip about 900 pounds away from it, it helps, you know, bring it up to speed.
I believe you were saying it weighs around, is it a little over 2,100 pounds?
Yeah, just around 2,150 is what I've weighed it at. And the engine's fairly stock. There was a couple things I had to modify that used to be in the trunk, actually. So if you see the coolant reservoir here, this used to be back in the very back behind the trunk.
Okay.
And I had to revise that to put it in a more central location. I wanted to keep this area in the back clear. And then the oil fill was actually right here next to the dipstick, and so I moved that up underneath the engine cover as well.
Okay.
And then just kind of made an impromptu cold air intake for it as well. Other than that, mechanically it's stock. And I really lucked out with this car because the prior owner, he had an engine put in, a lower mileage engine put in about 4,000 miles before I bought it.
Oh, excellent.
So really lucked out with the the work he'd put into it and the money he put into it, and it was a really good, you know, base to build this around.
How long did it take you to fabricate this?
So I started the day after Thanksgiving in 2020.
Oh, okay.
I finished it June 2nd. So it was about 7 months.
It's a hell of a COVID project, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a hell of a COVID project. My best estimate is about 700 hours in about 7 months.
Wow.
And I was working, you know, every Saturday and Sunday between 10 and 18 hours a day. And then through the week, I'd work about probably 4 nights a week on it, about 2 hours a night. And yeah, like I said, I did all of the fabrication, everything, and all the wiring, all the different problem solving along the way. The only things I've hired out were the alignment once I was finished with it.
So you do have an engineering background?
I do.
Believe?
Yep, I've got a manufacturing engineering degree.
That does help, doesn't it?
It does. I hadn't, when I started this project, I hadn't welded in 20 years, but I had taken welding engineering for several semesters, so I had a good, background knowledge, and it was an interesting process. Like once you take the car apart, making sure you don't cut off anything you may need later. So
yeah.
Going and, taking small cuts, going and using your mic and measuring the thickness of all the metal that you're finding to make sure you're leaving the strong metal behind and you're cutting away the weak stuff, and then leaving places to weld onto, making sure you find, the most strong, subframe assemblies, and then going and welding on to all those locations.
So there was a point in time to where this is all taken down to almost parts before you got the cage on there and started basically adding everything to it. Am I correct? So now, I mean, you can clearly see the suspension, which is really cool. Did you make any changes with that?
Only thing I changed was the coilovers. It originally had some Coney factory struts, but with the removed weight, I wanted to go coilover so that I could get the ride height correct and then have adjustability of the damping rates as well.
Now, one of the things that's really cool is when you first started talking about this vehicle, one of the first things you mentioned was you wanted to be able to mount these to the car. So that's fascinating, because if you look over there, there's another mount for another bike, and when you first got here, one of the things you showed us is that you can actually take the spare tire from the bike and put it back here if you have two bikes set up.
Correct.
So you're really into mountain biking.
I really am, yeah. It's funny, like a lot of us spend a lot of money to take our daily drivers and to add, some people add the overlanding gear, and you trying to adapt your daily driver to fit your hobby.
Boy, we're used to that, yeah.
Yeah, and so I really love karting, I really love mountain biking, and with a welder you can really make this thing whatever you want. And that's what I really loved about the project, was making it into exactly what I wanted.
I know a lot of people are curious about making this street legal. Now, if you look very carefully, you can see that all the lights are in the right spots, but did that take a little bit of time for you to finesse everything to make sure that this thing is actually street legal?
No, actually. The here in Colorado, all you need is lights, turn signals, tail lights, seat belts, a horn, kind of the basics.
Right.
And the car luckily had a clear title, so there was no government inspection. If it did have a salvage title, then you do have to go through some additional steps.
Right.
But with a clear title, I just registered as a Boxster, and it's insured that way, and the police have no problem with it at all.
One of the things that I really loved about Spyker, do you remember when Spyker came out and they had all the components that were exposed? I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Now, race cars do that all the time, but you don't see very many people doing that. Usually, if somebody has this out there, they'll throw a rubber boot on it or whatever. So everything in here is pretty much as exposed as it can be, which is slick. But there's a whole process to fabricating this car, right? And I wanted you to kind of take us through the whole process of fabricating this, because it's not something you do overnight.
Correct. And it was really an interesting process. It reminds me of, like a painter. You don't know exactly what the piece you're painting is going to start off or is going to finish looking like, and you just kind of end up with it. And that's the way the car kind of developed. I didn't know exactly what I wanted it to look like, but you start with a few fixed points that you have to meet. Some of those were the roll bar. So I started with the main roll bar and got that centralized in the most strong part of the subframe. And then with that positioned, the next part was back here with the strut towers. I wanted to cut away the factory sheet metal around the strut tower braces. So I used my plasma cutter, made these brackets, got them bolted on so it kept the factory alignment. And then once that was all secure, you can cut the rest of it away. And then the only dedicated points that were actually fixed were these and the top roll bar. And from there, just start bending things, put it in place, tack it, step back, take a look. I mean, there's lots of iterations you go through.
How much do you think you spent
So the car was $1,600.
That was a song.
Yeah, this was pre-COVID prices back before everything inflated.
Chips and all that.
But I've spent about $4,500 in tools, and then total with the car and everything else involving the car was about $9,800. So total spend is just under $15,000.
Okay, so stepping into the car, a little something to get used to, but unlike Nathan, we both actually fit. So a really interesting position. Do you always leave these forward?
Typically forward, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the seats are low enough. They're physically as low as they'll go in the car, because I like the go-kart feeling of being as low as you can possibly get, so you don't have visibility problems seeing.
Yeah. And I can already feel, I mean, we've just barely started moving, but can tell that this car is light. It is not got a lot of weight to it. I mean, you really don't have to use the throttle much to get it going. It's also really interesting to be able to see through where the doors would be. So do you have any problems with
make sure
scraping?
you turn like pretty
Take it at an
hard,
angle.
because it will scrape.
And the paint on this car is beautiful, so we definitely do not want to...
Well, I've scraped it a lot. But
Yeah. I love this shifter. Ha! This is quite a sensation. It's amazing. I mean, you feel so exposed. It's almost kind of motorcycle-like.
Exactly, yeah.
It makes a hell of a noise. This is
I really
unreal.
lucked out. People spend a lot of money to make their cars sound this good, and all I had to do was take the muffler off.
Yeah, exactly.
So it just goes straight out of the cats.
When there's so little bodywork, well, there's no bodywork in between you and the engine, so you really get to hear it. Yeah, it's just crazy the way this feels, and I mean, there's like nothing in between you and the direction that you want to turn. It's just immediate. So, does it ever get old driving this car? I mean, do you ever...
The sun gets old.
Okay,
On,
so
like-
getting cooked in the Colorado sun?
Yeah, because you like to take it to work on the days when it's going to be 80 degrees and sunny, but sitting in traffic with the sun directly above you beating down, that does get old.
Yeah, I can see that, especially again, I mean, the sun in Colorado is pretty intense. So I was surprised to see just how nicely put together this was, but then to hear that you actually fabricated this yourself. There's not a lot of people that have the talent to make something like this out of bare metal, from scratch.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what kind of tube bender do you have? I'm assuming it's
I've got
hydraulic.
No, it's actually a manual one. It's one of the JD Squared benders that's a mandrel bender. And
So you didn't
take
need to
that
go
back.
to the
I don't
gym
think
while you were
it's actually
building this.
correct. I took a lot of days off from working out.
Yeah.
But I had a MIG TIG welder. I did most of the cage using MIG welding just because it was faster, and I'm still learning TIG.
Right.
But I think, if I built another one of these cars, I would like to do it with TIG welding. And there's a few things I'd do differently, but I'm generally very happy with the way this thing turned out.
It turned out incredible. And we're about to pull onto the road here, which means we're probably not going to be able to hear much. This is not one of those like date night cars where you're having conversation with the wife, chatting about things.
Oh, it's okay below 40.
Yeah. It drives so well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really easy to get used to. It's very intuitive, and just that lack of weight, again, it makes it so easy.
Yeah.
But I love the feel of the transmission. I love the clutch. So this transmission, this shifter setup, who builds this?
So this is a numeric shifter, and it's one of the best, and it's the feel is great, and it's also, because everything's cut away,
there we go.
It just looks terrific, and I love the look of it. So it was kind of I've spent almost as much on that as I did on the car, but I feel like it was worth it. It looks great, it feels great.
Yeah,
it really fits the ethos of the car.
Being able to go through the gears and have that feel really good, that's such a huge part of driving well. And obviously, I mean, we don't have a ton of very windy roads around here because we're on the front range. It's all just a grid pattern. But the couple turns that I did get to take, unsurprisingly, there's just no body roll.
Yeah.
It doesn't lean, which, again, not surprising, but still very cool. Thank you for letting me drive it.
You're welcome.
It was quite an experience.
It's a lot of fun. I'm proud of it.
I can see why, for good reason.
Wow, what a treat. This is fantastic. Guys, please write in the comments below what you think. I think this is amazing. Up close, it's even more incredible. And you do go to Cars and Coffee and whatnot, right? I mean,
Correct,
that's where Roman found you. And wow, if you guys see this in person, take some photos, send them to us. I'm curious to get your perspective on it. Thank you so much for showing us this car.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you next time.